In accordance with the order of the Office of Governor issued on March 16, 2020, as extended by the Office of the Governor on June 12, 2020, the City Council for the City of Duncanville, Texas will conduct a City Council special meeting by video conference at 10 a.m. on Saturday, November 21st, 2020, in order to advance the public health goal of limiting face-to-face meetings, also called social distancing, in an effort to slow the spread of the coronavirus COVID-19 pandemic. This is an open meeting conducted by video conference. There will be no public access to a physical location. Comments were to be submitted to the city secretary by 4 p.m. on Friday, November 20th, and stuff to speak during citizen comments after the executive session. You must register with the city secretary for 4 p.m. on Friday, November 20th, and the email public comment November 21st. My understanding, there wasn't any public comments. Kristen, is that correct? Okay. During the citizen comments period of the agenda, the city secretary or mayor will read your comments. You will need to register with the link below. And if you're on there, you're on the link. So with that, I will call this meeting to order at 10 a.m. It is our town hall meeting. During the town hall meeting, a quorum may be present. The city council will not deliberate, and therefore no vote and action will be taken by the council. The city secretary will moderate comments for the town hall. Citizens and residents of the city of Duncanville will be given the opportunity to ask written questions to the city manager candidates in a question and answer format only. And with that said, at 10:08, we'll call this town hall meeting to order. And we'd like to welcome everyone here. And we have two fine candidates for the city manager position. We have Aretha Ferrell-Benavides and we have Brian Bosshardt. And I would like each of them to spend 2 minutes to tell us about themselves. Ms. Ferrell-Benavides, if you would start, please.
Hello, everyone. Good morning or afternoon, depending on where you are. As they said, I'm Aretha Ferrell-Benavides. I am a proud candidate for the city manager. I'm originally from Fort Worth, Texas, where I held my first local government job with the city of Fort Worth, where my mother worked and retired from. It was there I decided that I wanted to pursue a career in local government, and ultimately decided that was the job for me. And through this, I prepared through three things: education, experience, and making sure that I remained effective. Education-wise, I attended Southern University for my undergraduate degree, which is in political science, and I got my master's degree from Howard University. But what makes me who I am is the people around me, and those are the people who are most important to me. My grandmother, who lives in Fort Worth, Texas, she's 92. My mother, who is in Tomball, Texas. My husband, Ted Benavides, who was a city manager himself, and my son, Jeffrey Alexander, who is a sophomore at the University of Kansas, also focusing on local government. And so it's that passion that has led me through a career that spanned throughout the United States and in different types of levels of positions. And I'm just excited to be here today as a candidate. Thank you.
Well, good morning to all. As the Mayor Pro Tem said, my name is Brian Bosshardt. I'm happy to be here as well, excited to be here. I grew up in Minnesota, actually, the son of a Methodist minister. And I shared that with you because I have this tremendous passion for the work that we do in local government. I think there's an awesome responsibility behind that effort, behind the effort of serving our communities. And you know, it dawned on me early on in my career that I actually was in some ways following in my father's footsteps and sharing that public service value. You know, from local government perspective, we serve our communities from City Hall. My father was a minister and he served his communities from his church. And I guess it kind of brings me some satisfaction to know again that we share that same value of service to individuals. I've had the opportunity to work in cities as small as 18,000 and up to 250,000 in the states of Colorado, Arizona, New Mexico, and now Texas. Once again, I'm happy to be here, and thank you to everyone for your participation in this town hall. Thank you.
Thank you both very much for your opening comments. Kristen Downs, our city secretary, will you go over the rules for the town hall? Thank you.
Okay. So each citizen will ask either both candidates or individuals a question, and then the candidate will answer and respond. We are going to give the first priority to any and all Duncanville city residents first. I will be moderating the chat questions via Zoom, also through email and Facebook. So just kind of bear with me as I try to get all those questions in. We do have the first question, which we will start off with for Miss Ferrell-Benavides. You seem to be changing jobs every few years. What career goal are you trying to achieve, and how does this job in Duncanville help you achieve that?
So my career goal, as I started in my introduction, was to serve as a city manager. Within that role, I've taken opportunities all over the country. One of the things that did happen in my career is I've worked in some strong mayor forms of government, for example, with the District of Columbia. As a mayoral appointee, what occurs is you are actually asked to resign as the new mayor comes in, and you may or may not be appointed. And so I worked for 4 mayors within the District of Columbia, which actually has a lot to do with some of the job changes. The city manager's life expectancy is 2 years minimum. 5 years is considered a major success. Our hope in many city management forms of government is that we would get to retire from organizations and serve in those areas, but that unfortunately has not been the case. Throughout my career, I have gone to different places and taken on opportunities just because it was an opportunity to grow and to learn and fill that toolbox of information. And so what I'm searching for is to help serve as a public servant, to do everything I can in an organization as long as I can. And that is part of why you see sometimes changes happening. Also in the city of Chicago, another strong mayor form of government. Moving into a city manager form of government has always been my goal, and I've been happy to be there.
All right, Mr. Bosshardt, what is your career goal, and what attracted you to this job?
Well, I went to undergraduate school in St. Paul, Minnesota, and got a political science degree, and then went on to Arizona State University to get my master's in public administration. And I think since I've entered local government service, my goal was to reach the city manager's chair. There was a point in my career when I was in a big hurry to get to that chair, and then you start to understand the realities of what it means to be a city manager. And it's not an easy position. It's not an easy job. And so I slowed down that need to get there, worked my way towards the position in various communities that I had the chance to serve. And then most recently was city manager in Bedford. I will tell you what attracts me to this role in the Duncanville community. My wife and I made several trips to the city in preparation for this interview, and we traveled to as many neighborhoods as possible. We traveled through the commercial areas, we wanted to get a sense of Duncanville itself, and we were struck by the fact that there is a sense of place in Duncanville. There's a uniqueness to this city, and you don't always get that living in such a large urban area that we do. You can get lost in a neighborhood in Duncanville and not really recognize the fact that you're 15 minutes from a major metropolitan area. And so the city itself has been able to keep its small town charm while sitting in adjacent to or next to an extremely large metropolitan area. And it's that community of character, that sense of place that has attracted both myself and my wife to this role and wanting to live in your community.
All right, we're going to start with Ms. Aretha. What steps have you taken to become familiar with our local concerns?
Well, I've most recently worked in Glen Heights, Texas, which was part of the Best Southwest. And so gives you a perspective of dealing with some of the challenges of being a suburban to a larger metropolitan area. But when we look at some of the issues that are happening in the state, it goes from a legislative standpoint and internally. And so part of it is watching council meetings, looking at your council agenda, also looking at what's happening from a legislative standpoint at the state level, spending time in the community. To Duncanville. I have family who live in Duncanville. I've been very, very connected to the community for most of my life. And so those modern problems that we're facing now is just really starting to engulf yourself, not only reading the newspaper, but also spending time. One of my favorite things to do in a community when I go to visit is to spend some time in the grocery stores and some of the areas where people are, and just to hear what people are talking about, what people are struggling with. And so familiarization is not just to travel to the city, but to also become part of the city and talk to the people in the city about what's important to them and what challenges they're facing, looking at both a high level, but also looking at just the basic level of the things that are happening in the community.
And Mr. Bryan, the same questions. What steps have you taken to become familiar with our local concerns?
Well, actually, a lot of similar aspects. You do a lot of research with respect to trying to determine what makes the community tick. Again, it's watching council meetings, it's reviewing those agendas, it's spending time in the community, as I mentioned in my earlier answer. I know the community it's actually very similar to the city of Bedford in terms of size, both in square miles and population, and actually also with respect to where its maturation level as a community itself. It's reaching build out, and that means it's also reaching redevelopment phase and the need to start looking at infrastructure, both what the city controls and then also what the commercial area, with respect to its commercial areas itself. So I'm seeing a lot of parallels with respect to the service I had in work that I was doing in Bedford and where the Duncanville community is as well. And so I think my background and my strength in that area would help with respect to entering that redevelopment phase and really taking a long, hard look at where does the community and the city council really want to take the community moving forward. So.
All right, next question. We'll start with Ms. Aretha again. Why should you be chosen as Duncanville's city manager?
Well, three things. One is education. I've gone through not only with my undergraduate and graduate degree, but I've also pursued additional training. I've been part of the Senior Executive Institute with the University of Virginia. I've gone through the National Forum for Black Public Administrators Executive Training Institute. I've also graduated from Leadership Southwest. Education is a very foundation of what helps you. The next is experience. Not only do I have experience in larger municipal governments, but I have experience in smaller municipal governments. My experience is not only with just fiscal management, but economic development, redevelopment, and all of the components that I see very important to the city of Duncanville as you move to this next phase as far as build out. The last is effective. It's being able to accomplish and get things done. There is an opportunity here to actually have deliverables and start to make a difference. This phase for Duncanville is the phase where we're looking at how do we start to continue to not only attract residents, but to retain our residents who are there and grow on it. And those three components make me who I am. And the last thing that doesn't begin with an E, it's about passion. This is what I decided to do over 30 years ago, and this is what my heart tells me and still drives me to do for public service and serving the people. And I believe that Duncanville is the home for me. Thank you.
And same question, why should you be chosen as the Duncanville city manager?
Thank you. Well, again, I think you've got two really experienced individuals here that you're considering for this role, and I think I bring a similar level of experience with respect to all the past cities that I've had the opportunity to serve. I have a tremendous amount of passion for the work that we do, that we do in local government. I'm actually a trained facilitator as well, and I think that can be of great assistance as we try to ensure that the organization is positioned in the correct way to be able to accomplish, again, the goals and the vision that the mayor and council are setting with the community itself. I'm also a graduate, actually, of the Senior Executive Institute as well. And again, I think I've got the background and the experience in some of the areas that the city actually needs as it moves forward in terms of its next level. In terms of its redevelopment, et cetera. So I think I bring that skill set that will allow me to excel in the role.
All right, Ms. Aretha. The Redbird Mall development is going to bring in new business with proposed medical clinics, hotels, office space, and retail. What would your first course of action be to kickstart redevelopment in Duncanville to keep up with the increase in business that the new Redbird Mall will bring?
Well, we've got I remember when I used to go to Redbird Mall growing up. It was a major hub for shopping in the southern sector. And even though I was from Fort Worth, we would love to come to it. And as this project has been going on for a number of years in the development and redevelopment has been going on, the key now with this development is how do we complement it with the adjacent and the abutting of Duncanville to it is what are the things that will support it that will also help us to benefit from the Redbird development. And so that's working hand in hand with the city of Dallas and their development group. I have known the city manager of Dallas for a number of years. My husband used to be the city manager of Dallas, and he was working on the redevelopment and development at the time. But one of the things for us is how do we make sure that in that area that we're starting to do complementary development that will support, but also that will benefit the city. And that would be part of meeting with them and partnering. Part of one of the challenges that I know faces in Duncanville is the fact that they're not part of DART, but DART is part of Dallas and it comes to that area, and making sure that that transit development is also tied to some of the things that we can do in Duncanville to ensure that residents are seeking and getting the advantages of this development. And so lots and lots of development meetings, but also making sure that we have a seat at the table early on and continuously and looking at what's happening there.
Mr. Bryan, would you like me to reread it, or are you good?
Please, thank you.
It says the Redbird Mall development is going to bring in new business with the proposed medical clinics, hotels, office space, and retail. What would your first course of action be to kickstart redevelopment in Duncanville to keep up with the increase in business that the new Redbird Mall will bring?
Well, I think first and foremost, it starts with setting a vision for redevelopment. And so I think that's a community conversation that the city council would probably want to have with the community itself. Again, so if we're entering that redevelopment phase, where do we want to head into the future? What are we going to look like 10 to 20 years down the line? And then what are the specific steps that we need to take to accomplish that actual vision? So I think it starts with having a facilitated session with the community in order to establish that strategic plan and that vision. And that I think that takes multiple meetings, not only with the community, but also with the development community as well, in order to get a real sense of how we frame that development, the various actual projects that will come from that development. I think it also then comes into some actual studies of some of the key commercial nodes in the city. How can we repurpose some of these key commercial nodes? Are they going to remain commercial, or do we need to relook at maybe rezoning them to something else, working with the property owner to do so? So again, I think that's all part of setting a vision for redevelopment, finding out what the specific action steps are going to be from there, and then putting those into motion as the city moving forward.
Okay, Miss Aretha. Well, this is for both of y'all. If selected, what will your initial priorities for Duncanville be?
Okay. Initially, it's as I talk about in my transition plan is I call it LEAD, listen, engage, assess, deliver. Really listening sessions, truly engaging and understanding what not only the vision of the council, but all of the stakeholders in the community are. That's neighborhood-based sessions to listen to the priorities, listening to the department directors, making sure that I understand what their needs and challenges are, and what are the things that I can do, and what is the expectation of me. The second part is to engage, and that's really starting to get out on the field. That's ride-alongs with public safety, with the fire, with public works, even riding around with each council member to understand and see the community from their perspective is very important. And then putting assessments together. Assessment is looking at what documents are out there. What are the things from the comp plan to the city charter to other types of things that are there, and then delivery, coming up with a 30-day, 60-day, 90-day, 6 months, 1 year plan of what are the actions, because that's going to be very important. And so, and I call it lead because that's what you expect from a city manager, is to lead the way. But it all starts with being able to listen and to understand, and then engage, assess, and then deliver. Thank you.
Mr. Bryan, what would your initial priorities be for Duncanville?
Well, I have to be honest, my answer is going to be quite similar. It sounds like maybe even our 30, 60, 90-day plan was also similar, but it's a lot of listening. It's going on a listening tour. You know, I want to meet individually as soon as possible with each council member to get a sense of their expectations of the role of city manager, what it is, why they initially ran, what they're hoping to accomplish within their term. It's individual meetings with each of the department heads, asking them actually to give me a tour of the community itself so I can see the city of Duncanville through their eyes. What are they most proud of as a department head? What do they want to continue doing? What do we need to stop doing? What's working really well? And then from there, it's also going down deeper into the organization and getting in front of as many employees as possible. You know, my belief with respect to the organization is it's the employees that make it tick, right? They're the ones on the street delivering the services every day. And so as city manager, we have to walk in and build a understanding of the culture as quickly as we can. The culture drives the city. The culture of the organization is going to dictate whether or not we can be successful over the long term or not. And you don't know the organization, you don't understand its culture until you truly get inside of it. And that's why I want to get in front of as many employee groups as possible, as many employees as possible, deep into the organization to get their sense of the organization itself. Again, similar questions: what's working? What's not working? What should we stop doing? What should we start doing? What are you most proud of? You know, it's getting that understanding of culture then to be able to determine what the work plan is going to look like moving forward. At the same time, it's a listening tour out in the community as well, meeting with as many stakeholders as possible to get their sense of the organization. You know, what are the city's blind spots from their perspective, because they're not inside the organization. You know, what is it they believe that the city may not be focusing on that they should? So again, it's that listening tour. It's that getting a deep understanding of the organization, its culture, as well as the community's perceptions of the organization itself. And once you've got that kind of an understanding based on all of those meetings and all of that listening, it's at that point I can then sit down and start developing a work plan to say, developing a work plan with the department head team and city council to say, this is where we think we need to move or head moving forward.
All right, we're going to switch it up a little bit. We're going to start with you, Mr. Bosshardt. Duncanville is part of a region of cities that work together for economic development and transportation. How would you, as the city manager in Duncanville, work in that effort?
Well, I would embrace it. The city of Bedford is actually part of the HEB communities, Hearst, Euless, Bedford. We had an economic development foundation as well that worked to do economic development for our region. And so we were really attached at the hip, if you will, with respect to how we were working on economic development. And we believed that when you located a business in one of the three communities, that we were winning, because it's a region, and the region needs to be successful, not just one of the individual communities. So I have that experience in working in that kind of environment with respect to working directly with the region in order to advance mutual goals that we all have. So I bring that experience from my time working in the city of Bedford, as well as when I was deputy county manager in Los Alamos County. And we formed a regional body of most of the counties in the cities in the region and towns in the region to forward the economic development interests of the entire region. Countless trips to the legislature to advance our positions and advance the need for progress moving forward. So my background includes a tremendous amount of work doing regional work in order to advance, again, everyone's interests.
Okay, Mr. Aretha, Duncanville is part of a region of cities that work together for economic development and transportation. How would you, as the city manager in Duncanville, work in that effort?
Well, I think as someone who was part of that regional group previously, I think it's very important to reestablish yourself. I have not lost my connections. Economic development and transportation all go hand in hand, but the regional approach is very important. But what are the things that we can do to push ourselves forward? I'm going to use an example of my community that I'm currently in Virginia, in the Central Virginia. I'm part of the Tri-City region. Our Gateway Economic Development region focuses on efforts that not only benefit my city in Petersburg, but the cities around us. one of the things that we found very beneficial is how do we put together a collective partnership to say that this is something that may help me, but it may help you, and so therefore I may pass it on. So when I look at projects, I don't look at projects of what does it just do for Petersburg, what does it do for Colonial Heights, Hopewell, or the counties that surround us? And part of that regionalism is really a constant partnership. We have found through COVID-19 that there is a need to work together far more than ever before, and understanding that economic development for me could result in economic development for someone else. And so within the Best Southwest, not only when we're looking at the TxDOT projects of 67 and 20, these projects impact us all. And collectively, a stronger voice comes from working hand in hand. When we start looking at the redevelopment that's happening in Duncanville and the stuff that needs to happen and that's happening in Dallas, we also look at Cedar Hill. We also have to look at DeSoto and making sure that sometimes these partnerships tie together. We share so many borders with other people in Duncanville. It's very important to keep it. But using that arm of Best Southwest, as well as our Economic Development Authority, to lead the way and guide those conversations and stay present in where we're trying to go, and coming up with a collective regional plan for where we go. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Bryan, what needs, if any, have you identified that need to be addressed in Duncanville?
Well, I think one need is a need that's shared by cities across the nation, and that's our response to the COVID-19 pandemic. And hopefully this vaccine comes soon and we get back to some sense of normalcy, whatever that's going to look like, and how are we going to manage through that? How do we continue to help the businesses in the region, in the city of Duncanville that have been hit so hard by this pandemic, you know? So managing that effort, managing how it's impacting the city's budget, how it's impacting services, is going to be an ongoing issue. Economic development is certainly an issue, or an opportunity and a challenge, right, with respect to the fact that the city has reached build out. And how do we maximize the remaining parcels that are left to the benefit of the community itself and the benefit of the city as well, in terms of maximizing tax dollars coming into the city, so we can have some type of in decreasing, I guess what I'm trying to say is decreasing the reliance on the property tax. And then finally, it's the redevelopment that we've already spoken to. You know, that's where the city's at. It's reached that point in the maturation of a community, and how do you develop that vision for redevelopment again, and what you want the city to look like on into the future.
Okay, Ms. Aretha, what needs, if any, have you identified that need to be addressed in Duncanville?
Infrastructure is the first thing. As we drove around and toured on it, part of it is, as we start to look at the roads, the streets, the internal peripheral streets, that is very important. And the same thing with the water source system. I believe that, as with any community, that is something that funding's limited, but it's something that's very, very crucial. And so those two infrastructure areas have to be focused on, and also identifying funding and alternative ways of funding these. In a community that is been around for a while, unfortunately, the lines don't last. The second is redevelopment. It's a landlocked community. Duncanville was one of the early pioneers to develop in the Best Southwest. And so one of the issues is, what do we do with that next phase of redevelopment? And looking at a landlocked and very few lots that are available for new development, it's going to be important to look at what can we do with the existing. Some of it is going to be building up and creating those mixed use areas that have both retail and housing type stuff. And all of that ties into the economic development plan. The cities are very dependent on property tax, which in some cases is an advantage when we deal with COVID. But as we start to look at the sales tax and the retail opportunities, the key there is maximizing what are those opportunities and what are those things that benefit. Stabilization is the last thing, and stabilization focuses on not only fiscal stabilization to survive and move beyond COVID, but what is that next phase? And what are those things that need to happen at a legislative level that will also ensure that cities are protected from things? Because I believe that with COVID-19, one of the things that cities are facing is a lot of money has been infused through the CARES Act and other funds into governments. Somehow that money's going to have to come from somewhere. And so my concern is, how do we prepare for whatever fiscal impact comes from federal subsidies that have come to governments that may be missing afterward. And so we've got to start focusing on what is the long-term fiscal impact of CARES beyond just the sales tax and revenue that's lost from general use tax. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to go to a question from Facebook, and this is for Ms. Aretha. How often did you how often did you go on a ride along with the
in my previous city? I started out and I went with each and every council member on a ride along of their community. And that was really, really important because it's, as Mr. Bryan mentioned, it's seeing it from their perspective. What is important to you and what does this community mean to you, and understanding the different neighborhoods. I put together and grabbed a map when I first got there and said my job was to get lost in the city. That was part of interviewing. Just drive around with no set place to go to see the community. Moving from that process, I then toured the city with each council member. I then just created what was called my ward walks or ward rides. With my senior staff, we all got together on a trolley with the council member from that ward, and we toured the community. We walked the streets. And part of that was also to start to get out of our offices and to see the community, to see the people and talk with the people about what's going on. There's nothing like you hit a pothole and the public works director's like, oh my God. One example of our ride along that happened is we were driving in one of our wards and the bridge was out, and it had been out for years. And it was one of those examples of what citizens were dealing with every day when they had to drive all the way around it. And so we continued that within my first year and my second year of this. We continue to do this, and on a daily basis, I just drive around the community to see. When it came to police and fire, I've spent time riding with both my police and fire, and most recently, my project is during COVID, we were faced with a water crisis. And in that water crisis, it was a matter of who had water and who did not. And so we rode around to the communities to find out, to make sure that people had service or whether they did not. And so this continues. If you're a good city manager, is a city manager that is not only doing the stuff behind the desk, but out in the communities, talking to the people. And so it continues ongoing.
Okay, Mr. Bryan, how do you feel that art and theater impact quality of life as well as tourism in the community?
They definitely impact quality of life. I mean, art is, it's what makes a whole community, right? It's not just, it's what it contributes to the quality of life itself in our community. So there's a great contribution there. Actually, in the city of Bedford, in my time there, we were struggling and looking for how we could help fund some of the actually a local theater group who was losing its location. And so I think art is a important aspect of the community, and we have to look to how we can support it as a local government. Tourism, my goodness, brings in residents from the outside who hopefully are spending their hard-earned dollars in providing tax dollars to us. So there has to be a focus on tourism as well. And so they're part of the overall services that we provide and overall aspects of what make quality communities.
Ms. Aretha, how do you feel that art and theater impact the quality of life as well as tourism in a community?
Well, art is very vital, and it's important because it creates the culture, and culture gets to represent all individuals within the community, and it brings that forward. It also, as I've seen even in Duncanville with the beautification efforts of painting the electrical, to me, it's an expression. It's an expression of the people. It's a representation of who we are. I remember when the city of Chicago started doing art work and putting sculptures all over the city. And as I moved around, and you go to New York and they had the apples, it became a part, and it became a tourism aspect of it. And so it helps to enhance. We've also found from our young people that it's an expression. It helps them to develop. It also, the culture and the arts help the young people to also see themselves in a creative fashion. And that expressionism is very important. And so I believe that we must support the arts. I also believe that it also promotes economic development because it becomes a sense of place, and it creates something that people look forward to, and it ties into it.
Okay, Ms. Aretha, tell me your ideas of a city manager role in the economic development efforts.
Well, it just depends. And in many cases, for example, I can sometimes be the face or I can be the supporting face. Developers want to know that they have support from a leadership standpoint. I'll give an example of a project I'm working on now. And part of it was my early on kickoff meeting to say that you have my full support. You can reach out to me, you can talk to me, and that I can be there. My job is to take away the barriers and to create a green light. And to create a green light means that I've got to work within my community and within my team to make sure that the things that they need are available. One of the biggest challenges that individuals have in development projects is how we find a way to always say no, but how do we get to that yes, but also understanding what are the needs, defining the needs and making sure the resources are there. And so I've gone and participated in a number of conferences that focus on economic development, but my job is not only to be that face sometimes, but be that voice, but also be the facilitator to help things to move forward as the city manager.
Okay, Mr. Bryan, tell me your ideas of the city manager's role in economic development effort.
Okay. I think that really varies by community, and I think it's really established by the culture and the norms that are already set in that community itself. So again, I've been part of in a previous city I've worked in, I've been part of a team. I think in overall economic development is a team sport to begin with, but I was actually part of a team that the city manager put together that involved residents from the community itself. It involved a local economic development foundation, or excuse me, a community development foundation. And we would meet and come together monthly and discuss about some of the various projects that we're working on in terms of bringing to the community itself. We had residents on that team that were helping give input to us in terms of some of the changes or some of the things that they wanted to see in that community. In Bedford, we were part of a foundation, but at the same time, I took the lead on a lot of the projects with respect to our economic development work. And again, I think Mr. Aretha is correct. The development community, the developers, they want to know they've got the support of the organization, the support of the city manager with respect to the projects that they're bringing forward. So again, I think the community itself defines what the manager's role is with respect to economic development, but it's certainly an important aspect of the overall operations of a city in terms of, again, how we accomplish our vision and our goals moving forward.
Mr. Bryan, what are the 3 specific Duncanville community concerns you would start with immediately?
The 3 concerns that I would start with immediately. Well, I would need to get a sense of the impact of COVID, both on the organization itself, on its service delivery, on its service to the community, its impact on the budget itself. I know the mayor had shared with us that it wasn't as great as they initially believed, but I know it's got to have an impact. It's on service. It's got to have an impact on the employees who are out there on the front lines. And so I would want to immediately have an understanding of how that's impacting, again, how that's impacting our employees and what specific steps might we need to take to make that better. I don't know what those are until I get inside and have an understanding of what that impact is. But I do think that would be something I would immediately want to have get an understanding of with respect to the overall organization itself. I guess secondly, it would be getting an understanding of the organizational culture. I got to have an understanding of that culture and knowing what we're working inside of it. So that goes back to that listening tour I discussed. So again, it's getting an understanding of how that culture drives the organization. New employees come on board and the existing employees teach the new employees the culture itself. So what's being taught, is it a quality one? Is it not? I have no reason to believe it's not quality and it's not high performing, but for me to be successful, it's getting an understanding of that culture. So I know what I'm operating within. So those initial steps that a city manager takes are gonna, in some ways, dictate future success, right? So it's having a lot of internal conversations with the staff to get an understanding of the culture we're working in and what changes they think need to be made immediately, or where do I need to wait? And then thirdly, I think it would be getting an understanding of the city council's direction, the city council's needs, its expectations of me, its expectations of the organization, and where it wants to head. So again, that goes back to all those individual meetings with the city council, and then developing that action plan that comes from that and comes from all the other meetings that I discussed earlier.
All Ms. Aretha, same question. What are the 3 specific Duncanville community concerns you would start with immediately?
The first is fiscal. I start with that because of the fact that we are in a not only a pandemic, but which has created a bit of a fiscal crisis. And so looking at the Duncanville budget, I think it's very, very important to go through and see what are the things that we've prioritized that need to continue to support our community, but also to focus on how do we look at our long-term plan. I do think that this is not something that's going to be over with tomorrow. And so we've got to really focus on that. The second is redevelopment, and we've talked about it a little bit. What does that redevelopment mean? The dealership, in which is prime for redevelopment, is finding not only what economic development is necessary, but what is the need and what is the want. I make a statement often that all development is not good development, and what are the things that really support the community and will help the community to move forward. And the last is stabilization. One of the things that we've all been dealing with is this crisis that we thought and hoped would be over with by now has had an impact. And so not only on our staff, but on our residents. And we've got to focus on the mental well-being of our team. Everyone cannot, there's no one who hasn't been impacted by the coronavirus. The other part of it is what is this impact has had on not only our employees and making sure they're fine, but also our citizens, that health and well-being. And so immersing myself in the community is my number 3 priority because it's really, really, really important to make sure that we are out there and checking up and making sure that things are moving forward, because people sometimes are suffering in private. And so we've got to make sure that we're out there, both internal and external.
All right, we're going to go to one of our Facebook Live questions, and this one is for you, Mr. Bryan. It says, how will you strive to work directly with each council member to assure that what citizens in the community are truly concerned about is reflected in the project that the staff has been tasked with?
Well, I think that's, again, it goes back to those individual meetings with the city council members to get their understanding of the community needs. I think it's also some kind of a facilitated session together with the city council in a room that doesn't involve the dais. So we can kind of roll up our sleeves again to have a facilitated conversation again about what are the community needs and what are the community wants. And I mean, they know the community best, right? And they're the ones out there having those conversations with them. So again, I think it goes back to my individual discussions with them. Hopefully those weekly, if not bi-weekly meetings with them to get an understanding of community needs, and then also getting them into a room together, I think over multiple sessions to facilitate a conversation about vision, about where do we want to take the community. And I think that getting an understanding of that vision then allows us to start building those individual projects, those individual action steps that we need to take to accomplish that what it is the community envisions itself.
All right, Ms. Aretha, property taxes have been high for years. What ideas do you have for lowering property tax without losing services?
Well, we've got to diversify our revenue sources. There are a number of things that impact property tax. One is our collection rate. One of the unique things that you have in Texas is 100% veteran exemption. And so as we start to plan and know that we have more veterans in our community, we've got to make sure that we've come up with alternatives. And alternatives mean focusing not just on sales tax, but not just the word tax, but what are our alternative resources that we can bring in? What are the ways that we can bring in? A great example was when I worked in the District of Columbia, I had an office called Partnerships and Grants. And within my Office of Partnerships and Grants, we focused on how do we bring in outside funding to support city actions and services. And this has been very valuable because it gives us other alternatives to how we do things, whether it was Cameron Foundation, which is here as a foundation that grant funds different things. But how do we do this? An example in Petersburg would be, we needed a new library. And our library wanted to expand. We worked with our civic organizations and we worked with our community members, and they were able to actually raise the funds to make the changes necessary. And so how do we diversify our revenue sources? Because the only other way to reduce it is to bring in other sources of income.
Okay, Mr. Bryan, same question. Property taxes have been high for years. What ideas do you have for lowering property tax without losing services?
what was the old game show, the $100,000 question? I mean, I think that's something that every community across the Metroplex is looking for. How do we diversify our revenue streams and not be so reliant on the property tax? You know, it's economic development. It's again, it's going back to those key remaining parcels to ensure we maximize the best and highest use to hopefully bring in additional sales tax dollars to the community that would allow us to not rely so heavily on the property tax. I think it's looking for grants. It's looking for public-private partnerships that might assist us to be able to get some projects done, again, that will help us diversify the revenue stream. But again, it's a question that every city across this Metroplex is struggling with respect to over-reliance on property tax, and it's working with the Economic Development Foundation as well on key projects that will help us bring in additional sales tax.
All right, Mr. Bryan, what is your understanding of the relationship between the city manager, the council, and the citizens?
Well, the citizens are at the top of the organizational chart, and they elect the mayor and council, who then hires the city manager. And hopefully the city council is working in partnership with the community, getting an understanding of their wants, their needs, their desires. Again, the vision for where they want to take this community, and that hopefully then results in a sound set of direction for the city manager. I shared with the city council in my first interview is, quickly getting them inside of a room to facilitate a vision discussion about where do we want to head, and that's the city council's job. That's core to their mission of setting a vision for the community itself, and then how do we develop the specific projects that are going to help operationalize and achieve that actual vision. So to me, that's the breakdown of the three roles. But again, it starts with the community. They're the ones providing their input and thoughts and ideas to the city council, and then we're trying to develop that into a vision and then into hard, actionable projects. And so council then provides that direction to me, and I sit down with my staff, our staff, and help facilitate a discussion there about what those specific projects might be. I would also add that in that session with the city council, where we're trying to vision and we're trying to develop big key focus areas, that department heads and other staff are in that room as well. The subject matter experts are there to answer city council's questions as they develop the vision, as they develop the key focus areas that we then actually develop the actual plans and projects moving forward. So I guess that's my understanding of that relationship between the three.
Okay, Ms. Aretha, what is your understanding of the relationship between the city manager, the council, and the citizens?
I believe it should be a collaborative partnership. We serve, and I do mean we as public servants, we serve the people. And part of that is understanding the needs of the people. When I served as the Director of Neighborhood Action and Community Engagement for the District of Columbia, my job was to engage the citizens in helping us to set the priorities. We started out with a day-long citizen summit to say, what are the things that you want? And what are the things that you need? And what should be the priorities? Council sets the vision. That vision is based on the feedback they receive from their constituents, the citizens. My job is to implement the vision of council. And as the city manager, I collaboratively work between the two to make sure that we're going in the right direction with the check and balance. But it's a partnership, because we are only as strong as our ability to work together. And so that is the most important aspect of that relationship.
All right, we're going to go to a Facebook Live question. How important to you is being transparent with the community and really understanding what the community is concerned about, and that the council members truly understand the root of the concern? We'll start with you, Ms. Aretha.
Well, so we often talk about creating a level of transparency and making sure that people know what's going on. But just because you create transparency does not mean you create understanding. And so our job is not only to create the transparency, but to educate, and making sure that we are providing not only the facts and the details, but an explanation of those. And that is very important. The more that we educate and provide that information for our residents, as well as our council and our staff, the better we're able to get the things done. And so one of the big challenges, and I'll give an example of, as we started implementing, my role within the city of Chicago is I was a strategic planner. And part of the plan was to come up with innovative ways to re-engineer and to automate local government. But part of that was the importance was to make sure that people understood what does this mean to them and how does this reflect, not only from a staff level, but from the residents level. And so that education process actually helps our success because it helps us to understand what are the things that need to be done. And so that's my view.
Mr. Bryan, same question. How important to you is being transparent with the community and really understanding what the community is concerned about and that the council members truly understand the root of the concern?
Yeah, it's extremely important. Communicate, communicate, communicate. We can't communicate enough with our residents, et cetera. So I will tell you this, that in my last two previous positions, mayor and council would get feedback from the residents about some concerns about process, some concerns about how the city was operating. And we would go back internally in the organization, take that feedback, and then form improvement teams involving employees from all levels of the organization to go back and review those processes. And then to come back with a recommended way to change and a better way to make change moving forward. And we take that process then back out to the residents and say, here's the new process. We did that with utility billing. We did that with our purchasing process. So it's taking that resident feedback and then getting a basic level understanding of it, and then how can we use that to build a better organization moving forward. So and again, a lot of that came from the impact or the input that the city council was getting from our residents, et cetera. So a second piece of that I would say is another organization I worked in is we participated with I think the group was called OpenGov, although I'm not sure about the name of it, but it was a way for us to use our website to get out questions about process, to get out questions about decisions that the city was about to make, and then allowed residents just to get online and send in their thoughts on that process improvement, to send in their thoughts on whatever the issue that the city council might be deciding in the day. And we could provide them as much detail as we wanted, but again, it allowed the residents an easy way to give us input on whatever that issue of the day was for the community, so or for the organization, or for the city council for that matter. So transparency is key. We're spending public taxpayer dollars, and we need to be as open as possible with respect to our work and why we're doing it, why we're making the decisions that we make, et cetera.
All right, we're gonna keep with you, Mr. Bryan. Please give us a brief synopsis of your familiarity with our current mayor, city council, and community knowledge to express what you have ascertained, which makes you feel that you are the best choice for the position.
Well, I think you have a dedicated group of individuals who want to make positive change for the community itself. You know, I've enjoyed my conversations with the city council. I think they're dedicated to make change, and they're dedicated to move forward the organization itself and the community itself. It seems to me you have a pretty engaged residents. You have a pretty engaged community itself, which is great. You know, I think that one of the aspects of being able to be successful is our ability to engage with our residents. And it seems to me that they have a very much an engaged residents and an engaged citizenry. And I think it's again, getting a baseline understanding of what their wants and needs are, and then being able to develop that plan for attacking all the issues and building a plan for moving the organization forward. So again, a dedicated group of people who want to make change for the better.
And Ms. Aretha, give us a brief synopsis of your familiarity with our current mayor, city council, and community knowledge to express what you have ascertained, which makes you feel that you are the best choice for the position.
Well, the city of Duncanville is fortunate to have a unique group of individuals who have expertise in various areas, whether it's fiscal management to economic development to redevelopment to business process engineering, even health and human services. The passion is there. Their concern, as I look at the council and have talked to the council, is about the city. What does it take to move the city of Duncanville forward? And it's that passion and commitment that is part of the driving that will create a success. I believe that my desire to be in Duncanville is tied to that same type of passion, the passion for helping those who don't have a voice. Public service is not just about being a city manager, but it's about service. It's about serving those individuals, serving the residents and people of Duncanville. That's what I see in our council members, and that's what I see in myself. That's what drives me, and that's what continues to drive me to continue to work in local government. And so why do I feel that I'm the best fit and a fit for this position? It's because of that passion. It's because of seeing the individuals that are leading this organization and feeling that I could carry their vision forward and move the city in the direction per their direction that they have deemed important to us, as well as the residents. Thank you.
Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and grab one last question from our Facebook Live. Somebody who has not previously asked a question, so that's why I'm getting his first. Duncanville has always had a large sense of community, from parades to Main Street gatherings in times of COVID. What is your plan to keep that sense of community? We'll start with you, Mr. Bryan.
Would you read that one more time, please?
Duncanville has always had a large sense of community, from parades to Main Street gatherings in times of COVID. What is your plan to keep the sense of community?
That's a good question. I'm sure everyone is missing all of those quality events that the city was having before the pandemic. Can we do it in a virtual way? Can we do it in a social distancing way? I think, again, these community events are part of the fabric of the community. They're part of the, increasing the quality of life of the community. And so to the extent that we can, we have to figure out some way of, again, holding those kinds of events. Again, whether it's doing it in a virtual way, whether it's finding some way to be able to do it in large parks, et cetera. But I certainly understand the need, and certainly understand that why folks will be missing those kinds of quality events, because again, they really help define and make and create the reasons why people want to remain residents in the city itself. So we certainly have to look for ways to be able to do that, for sure.
Okay, Ms. Aretha, same question. Duncanville has always had a large sense of community, from parades to Main Street gatherings in times of COVID. What is your plan to keep that sense of community?
I think it's very, very important. When I worked for the city of Glen Heights, we started that process of trying to, and during the holiday, we created what was called our season of service. And it was an opportunity to engage and provide. Now, COVID has changed everything, but there's still ways to do things, whether it's a holiday parade. Right now, I'm looking at how do we reshape our traditional holiday parade and creating a city of lights where there's a drive-through parade. How do we also make sure that we're giving back and doing things? One of the things that we kick off next week is our Feed Petersburg. We plan to feed 7,000 families. We've engaged our local restaurants to come in and prepare food for our residents. It's a way to reach out, and it's a way to make sure that people are still finding their connection. Creating those portals, it's not easy, but it's very possible. And so that is something that we've got to look at. What are the unique ways that we can still engage our residents and make sure that we're reaching out to them, but also continuing our traditions to include parades and other activities within our community in a safe fashion.
Thank you. I would also like to thank everybody on Facebook Live and the Q&As and the chats for submitting questions. Our hour is up, so I'm now going to turn it over to Mayor Pro Tem McBurnett, and thank you to both candidates.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kristen, again for moderating. We also want to thank Mr. Bosshardt and Ms. Ferrell-Benavides for being there. And, we have a tough choice ahead of us, obviously. So with this, I need to go back to our agenda, and we will be adjourning this town hall meeting. Item number 4 will be a special meeting of the City Council, which will be called to order at 12 p.m. And we will have a call to order then, but we will effectively in this town hall meeting are going to recess for this. We want to thank everyone for being here and being a part of the community and being part of Duncanville. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem, can you call the time, please, sir?
Thank you, ma'am. The time is 11. Oh, I'm sorry. You know what, Kristen, I don't want to call it yet. I'm sorry. I would like to actually to have 2 minutes from Mr. Bosshardt leading, and then Ms. Ferrell-Benavides to give 2 minutes each on why they would be the best candidate, or have closing remarks.
Well, thank you, sir. Well, first, let me recognize the participants today, whether it was watching the town hall or with those who submitted questions. You know, again, I said it earlier, it's our ability to engage our residents is really going to define success. And so to see this level of participation is wonderful, and it just increases my interest in this opportunity itself. I told you that my wife and I spent several days taking trips throughout the city itself, and we were again struck by the sense of place that you've developed within your community itself. And we're not only interested in serving your community, we're interested in living and being a part of it. And that, I believe that's a large part of being a city manager. Should I have the opportunity to serve as your city manager, you won't always find me in City Hall. I'll be coming to you. I'll be at the neighborhood events. I'll be at the community events. I'll be in the field, checking on issues that might be happening. And I'm certainly not a city manager that sits behind my desk. I want to get out and about, both internally in the organization, as well as out and about in the community, getting to continue to learn it itself. So thank you for your participation, and I'm honored to be considered.
Thank you. Well, today I am before the residents of Duncanville as a 30-year public servant. My experience has been marked with significant community engagement, fiscal management, economic development, and redevelopment experience. As a change manager, I have been a committed, innovative, results-driven, community-oriented leader. That means being part of the community and engaging with the community as a leader. I have been blessed with a strong sense of family and purpose, and that sense of purpose has led me to the city of Duncanville. In utilizing these gifts and the wisdom and knowledge that have come from a second-generation city leader, I believe that I would serve the city of Duncanville well. I'm excited about this opportunity to return to a place that I call home, and to be back with friends and families to move the city of Duncanville forward. And I thank you for the opportunity today. I am honored to be among another distinguished candidate, and that you are in good hands with your leadership. And I believe the future of Duncanville is very bright. Thank you.
Thank you again to both of you. And we will again conclude this town hall. The official adjourn time is 11:09. Thank you very much, and thank you for being a part of this. Okay. We have recessed executive session at 4:18 p.m. We're back in our Zoom link at 4:22 and reconvening the city council meeting. And it's item 5. Let's see, we've done item 5. 6 is take public comments. We took public comments earlier. 7, take any action necessary as a result of executive session. And there is no action to take as a result of executive session. However, we will have a meeting scheduled for Tuesday, December 26th at 6 p.m. No?
Correction, is that 24th?
4th? Yeah.
24th.
Tuesday is the 24th. Did I misstate what we were doing?
I think you said 26th.
Okay. Forgive me. Okay. So as a result of executive session, no action will be taken. We will have a meeting scheduled, a closed session meeting scheduled for Tuesday, November 24th at 6 p.m. Okay. And we will call this meeting adjourned officially at 4:23 p.m.